The morning sun stretched over the quiet suburban cul-de-sac, painting the manicured lawns and cookie-cutter houses in soft gold. But the peace shattered when Karen Whitmore, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, marched across the street with a pair of bolt cutters clutched in her manicured hands, her heels snapping against the pavement like gunshots. Her target stood gleaming in the driveway, Marcus Lee's rugged black Jeep, doors locked, gear secured, a task force vehicle that to any outsider looked like just another off-road ride, but in truth carried classified surveillance equipment tucked discreetly inside. Karen sneered, muttering about eyesores and rules being rules as she bent low, clipped the padlock with sharp crack, and yanked at the latch as if it were hers to claim, never once considering she was tampering with government property. Across the street, Marcus, dressed down in a plain T-shirt and cargo pants, stood frozen for a moment, disbelief knotting in his chest, before discipline steadied him, because Marcus wasn't just another homeowner. He was a decorated police officer, a leader in a covert task force whose Jeep wasn't parked there by accident but secured for quick deployment. He stepped forward, his broad frame casting a shadow over the neatly trimmed lawn, his voice calm yet edged with warning as he called out, "Ma'am, that's my vehicle, and you need to step away." But Karen whipped around, eyes blazing with entitled fury, snapping. "This thing violates HOA code. You people think you can just clutter up this neighborhood? Not while I'm in charge." Neighbors peeked from porches, whispering, some shaking their heads, others recorded with their phones, while Marcus clenched his fists at his sides, restraining the storm rising in him, reminding himself he was an officer sworn to protect, even from arrogance like hers. Sarah from next door muttered, "That's government issue, Karen don't." But Karen cut her off with a bark, demanding Marcus, "Move this junk heap right now or I'll have it towed." What she didn't know, what no one there yet realized, was that the Jeep she had just broken into wasn't just a car. It was an operational vehicle belonging to an elite police task force, and tamper with it wasn't a matter of neighborhood rules, but a federal offense that would soon turn this HOA confrontation into a spectacle that would strip Karen of her false power and expose her arrogance for the whole block to see. Karen's voice rose sharper with each word, slicing through the calm morning air as if volume alone could make her right, and while she stood with hands on her hips in front of Marcus's Jeep, she barked about bylaws, property values, and her neighborhood, her tone dripping with condescension as though Marcus was a guest in a place he paid for just like everyone else, and yet beneath her fury was something uglier, an insistence that she had power over him, that her HOA badge meant she could decide who belonged. Marcus, arms folded across his chest, kept his composure, his jaw tight but his eyes steady, answering her rants with quiet firmness, reminding her the vehicle was legally parked, registered, and untouchable under federal law, though he never revealed the truth of what the Jeep actually was. That only enraged Karen more, and with a dramatic flourish she pulled out her phone, calling the HOA board, shrieking into the speaker about an unsightly military-style vehicle that violated every regulation, demanding immediate action. Neighbors trickled out, drawn by the noise, some siding with her, whispering about neighborhood standards, others shifting uncomfortably, sensing she had gone too far, and all the while Marcus's silence carried a weight that unsettled even those who doubted him, because he stood not like a man guilty of rule-breaking, but like a soldier bracing for the storm. When Karen announced she would call a tow truck on her own authority, Marcus finally spoke, his baritone cutting clean to the chatter. "You touch that Jeep again, and it won't be me you'll answer to." The warning rolled across the street, steady, controlled, but it only made her laugh, a high, mocking sound that grated like glass on stone, and she shouted back, "What are you going to do, intimidate me? You're just another rule breaker in my neighborhood." The tension spiked. Neighbors pulled out phones to record. Children peered from behind screen doors, and one of the officers from Marcus's task force, plain clothes but watchful from a distance, edged closer in case things escalated. Marcus refused to be baited, his years of training keeping him locked in restraint, but inside, the weight of her disrespect, the cutting lock, the mocking laugh, the insinuation that he was lesser, burned hotter than any firefight overseas. Still, he stood in silence, waiting, because he knew something Karen didn't, that within minutes his task force brothers and sisters would arrive for a scheduled regrouping, and when they did, Karen's empire of petty rules and false authority would crumble in front of the very neighbors she sought to impress, exposing her not as a leader, but as a tyrant she had always been. The standoff had reached its boiling point. Neighbors clustered on sidewalks, whispering and recording. Karen standing with her arms crossed in smug triumph, convinced the threats of towing and fines would soon bend Marcus into submission. But before she could dial another number, the low growl of engines echoed down the street. Not the quiet hum of delivery vans or family SUVs, but the commanding rumble of tactical vehicles rolling in formation. Heads turned as 3 black SUVs with government plates eased into the cul-de-sac, their presence alone shifting the atmosphere from suburban squabble to something far heavier. And when the doors swung open, men and women in tactical gear stepped out, weapons holstered, radios crackling, each one moving with the kind of precision that comes from years of high-stakes training. The crowd fell silent, a dozen camera phones raised shakily, and Karen's smirk faltered as one of the officers strode directly toward Marcus and saluted sharply. "Lieutenant Lee, we're ready for briefing." Gasps rippled through the bystanders, disbelief painted across their faces, as a man they thought was just another neighbor under Karen's thumb was revealed to be the ranking officer of an elite police task force. Karen stammered, her voice breaking as she tried to laugh it off, insisting this military show was just intimidation. But her words rang hollow against the backdrop of armored vests and clipped commands exchanged between officers preparing. For a federal operation, Officer Ramirez, Marcus's partner, approached with a half-smile and raised brow, glancing at the cut lock dangling uselessly from the Jeep's latch before speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "Lieutenant, looks like someone tampered with official task force property. Federal property." The crowd gasped again, a few neighbors audibly murmuring, "Oh no," as phones zoomed in on Karen's pale face, her arrogance dissolving into panic. Marcus finally stepped forward, his voice calm but edged with the steel of authority, as he addressed her directly. "You wanted this Jeep gone? You just committed a crime cutting into it. This isn't an HOA matter anymore. It's federal law." Karen's mouth opened and closed, excuses tripping over each other. But before she could form a defense, Chief Daniels himself emerged from one of the SUVs, his command presence undeniable as he scanned the scene, eyes narrowing at the broken lock before turning them on Karen with a weight that made her flinch. "Ma'am," he said flatly, "tampering with police task force equipment is a serious offense. You could face charges you don't even understand." The crowd erupted into whispers, phones shaking as they captured every second, and Karen, once the queen of the cul-de-sac, now stood frozen in the spotlight of humiliation, her reign collapsing in real time as the man she mocked for breaking neighborhood rules was revealed to be the very authority she could never hope to match. Karen's world crumbled in the span of a heartbeat. The smugness she had worn like armor now stripped bare as Chief Daniels' words hung in the air like a verdict, and the neighbors who once feared her HOA letters and endless fines now stared in stunned silence, some whispering with barely hidden satisfaction, others recording every trembling second of her unraveling. Marcus, still calm and composed, gave her no gloating smile, no petty jab, only the same steady gaze he had held since the first moment she cut the lock, because he understood something she never had. True authority didn't need to shout or threaten. It simply stood on the unshakable ground of truth. Officer Ramirez, unable to resist, held up the shattered lock for the cameras, his voice dripping with irony as he announced, "Evidence of tampering with government property." And the crowd gasped as Karen stammered, insisting it was just HOA enforcement, her voice cracking as she pointed weakly at the Jeep, claiming she was only protecting the neighborhood. But Chief Daniels stepped closer, his presence towering over her as he explained in a voice that brooked no argument. "What you did wasn't protection, ma'am. It was reckless, unlawful, and could have compromised an active operation." Her knees buckled slightly, the power she once wielded in homeowners' meetings dissolving into ash before the weight of real law. And though Marcus could have pressed charges, could have demanded her immediate arrest, he simply shook his head, telling Daniels quietly, "Let her live with what she's already lost. It'll be louder than any sentence." The crowd murmured in agreement, the neighbors who once cowered before Karen now emboldened by her disgrace, some laughing under their breath, others shaking their heads in disbelief, while Karen, red-faced and trembling, turned to flee back to her house, her once commanding heels clicking like the footsteps of retreat. Marcus walked his Jeep, replacing the lock with a fresh one Ramirez handed him, and as he fastened it shut, the officers of his task force lined up, offering nods of respect not just to their lieutenant, but to the man who had carried himself with dignity even when mocked and demeaned. The convoy engines roared back to life, and as Marcus climbed into the driver's seat, Sarah from next door called out, her voice breaking the silence. "Lieutenant Lee, we're proud you live here." And a ripple of agreement followed, neighbors clapping softly, some, saluting in their own small way, turning the once hostile cul-de-sac into a chorus of respect. Marcus gave a simple nod, no flourish, no speech, then led his team out of the neighborhood, the task force vehicles disappearing down the street, leaving behind only the echo of truth. Karen had tried to strip a man of his dignity, tried to wield power through arrogance and fear, but in the end it was her own pride that destroyed her standing, while Marcus's quiet strength left him not only vindicated but honored. The kind of respect no HOA bylaw could ever command, the kind of respect that endures long after the shouting fades.